Wow, the stories far out. I so much appreciation for being here. My life, as with everyone else's life, has always been about lessons, and lessons for us to learn and for us to grow from and to be better than what we originally were. My lessons have been about self-love and to learn that I matter. My lessons have confronted me, as with all these stories far out, for the repression of women. I mean, all my life, in my very sheltered life, I've had difficulty watching movies, and this is where I source the information of what goes on in the world. And I had so much trouble watching any of those movies where the women are raped, where young girls are being sold to older men, where women get treated unequal, and they're bashed by their husbands just because they're their husbands. And it just fills me with so much anger and the injustice of the law that is supposed to be there to protect these women that go through these things. And it's because it's the law that is written by man and for man, and that the same things as hearing all these stories still happens today. You know, I mean, across the ages, there's always been women to tirelessly stand up to make a difference, which is what we're all here today to do. It began with, you know, Elizabeth Stanton, with the women's rights movement, so we could have equal access to education and employment, equality within a marriage, where a married woman has the right to own her property, earn wages, have custody of her own children, and have control of her own body. When she was joined by Susan Anthony, together they pushed to help get women the right to vote. But these women could not make the progress without the backing of many women in the right place and the right organisations and societies. You know, one woman can make a stand, but it takes a joining in the arms of many women to make a difference. So my lessons in life showed this repression to me, as being told by a man in a male-dominated industry that I won't know the answer to his question. I had the same training as the man beside me. We even started on the same day, but clearly because I was a woman, I would not know the answer. It showed itself as sexual harassment in the workplace by a boss nearly 40 years my senior. When I found out that this wasn't just me, but it was also happening to women younger than my 27 years, I felt that I was the one that had to stand up and make this stop. So I took the stand for everyone it was affecting in their office. But because of the way he was treating me at work, no one else wanted to be treated that way. So they denied they ever said anything to me. So the women I stood up for and stuck my neck out for turned their backs on me. So I went alone. Okay, I lost my job because of it. I suffered mentally because of it, but I still stood up because it was the right thing to do. My lesson showed itself in a physically and emotionally abusive marriage. Between the ages of 34 and 40, I gained an understanding of why women stay with their abusers. I spent my first wedding anniversary with my kids in a women's refuge. I was moved 2.5 hours away from my support family and friends. And that was all the help that was offered to me. It was so humbling up to that point. But once I was there and safe, that was it. There was no support for me to get around my head around things. It was if you need anything, let us know. I didn't know what I needed. My mind was numb. My feelings were numb. All my focus went on to my kids to make this as normal as possible for them. Nothing went on to me. So I stumbled back into the relationship because of his promises of a better life, and also saying that he was going to therapy, and the therapist said that I needed to come back for her to be able to do it properly. So I went back. After 3 months of no progress in communication by my husband, the therapist started saying to me that he knows what to do. He knows it so well he could teach it, but he isn't able to put it into practice. So she began saying that I needed to start finding a way out. She could see things getting worse and was in fear for my safety. She told me to start hiding money, put together some emergency bags that can be grabbed when I needed to flee. I didn't listen. Well, I listened, but I didn't think at the time it could actually get any worse. But I was wrong. A few weeks after that last meeting with her, he inflicted major physical abuse to me and in front of my children. My daughter, who was only 8, was crying out to him to stop hurting her mum. My son not even barely 2, was screaming in tears for my comfort. The result from that was a domestic violence order placed on him by the police, and he was removed from the family home so I could move back. But that was after being homeless for a week with my kids. I was staying in cheap hotels, and at the end with a friend because I ran out of money for that. It wasn't until a week later that was processed through the courts. He breached the order 2 times in the first 3 months, and that resulted in it going from 3 years to 5 years. But during this time, he was relentless in making me feel bad about his situation, guilty for going to the police for help, filling me up of lies of going to therapy again and getting better with his anger management classes. When he threatened to commit suicide, showing me photos and his text messages one night of a rope in his boot and it being strung around a tree with a noose on the end, me begging him not to do it because his son needed a father. I called the police to report it to see if they could find him to stop him from doing this. But then I realised he was only doing it for attention, but that was way later. But it was enough for me to take him back again. The emotional and physical abuse continued to happen. My antidepressant medication continued to go up in dosage, and my depression got worse. I hid so much from my family and my friends, and I tried to hide so much from my kids to protect them. When it started happening around them, for them to hear it and see it, my daughter went to live with her dad the day after I found her hiding under blankets on the top bunk in the far back corner, protecting her little brother. She told me she'd heard his loud voice and the bang that followed and quickly took her brother from the playroom to the bedroom. I just couldn't have her thinking that her brother's safety was her responsibility when she was only 8. I felt I couldn't do anything to save myself or my son at that time because he was my husband's son, but I could save my daughter. So she went to live with her dad. 3 weeks after my 40th birthday, an argument erupted on the Friday morning that continued for 3 days. It was my breaking point, and I wanted to end my life. I could not continue to live this way. This is not what I wanted for my kids. So what kind of role model was I going to be to continue to stay for them to see how I was being abused for my son and for my daughter? And what kind of role model could I be if I took my life? So I made the decision to flee as far away as I could, someplace where I thought he would never find me, a place where I had family and support. I knew if I didn't have those, I would end up going back again and would most likely end up dying before my time. I made the decision to flee to my home country, back to New Zealand. I researched everything I could on that weekend about taking my son with me, but because the Hague Convention, it was not possible. I would be forced to return with my son, and when it came time for custody through the courts, all the other women I'd read about who had felt the need to go to these extreme things to keep themselves safe and their kids safe, lost their kids because of it. So I decided to do the right thing by the law and put the decision into the law's hands, as everything I read was yada, 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 except where domestic violence is concerned. So my beliefs at the time, well, there's domestic violence, there's the DVO in place, so getting custody quickly should be of no issue. I was wrong. I've had to prove there was domestic violence. I've had to prove my sanity in being able to have my son. I've had to jump through every hoop and go through every piece of red tape that's been put in place as there was no domestic violence involved. The mediation that I couldn't get exemption from lasted 8 months. I've been asked no less than 3 times by the same doctor for my son's lawyer in the same 1-hour conversation if I'd been escorted by the police or taken by ambulance to a mental institution because I suffered from depression when I was with my husband. I've been accused by my husband as being the one who was abusive in the relationship. I've been accused of being an unstable mother. As if I was investigated today, my daughter will be taken away from me. All this on documents sworn by him to be true, and I have to defend myself and provide evidence against these accusations when they have all the evidence against my husband as being the abuser. You know, from phone calls to the Women's Violence Support Line, to police interviews and photos of smashed up things in the house, to doctor's notes and documents of bruises on my body. Judges tell me I've yet to prove there was domestic violence. And because I'm in another country, and because I've not been in my son's life much due to his father making sure I'm not, that my son is currently better off with his father. That during these most fundamental, impressive times in my son's life, because he's now only 5, that his narcissistic, abusive father is his best role model. That going from a mama's boy, where he was always wanted, in my arms, hugs from me, sitting with me and time with me, that there's signs, according to my son's lawyer psychologist, he is suffering from abandonment issues. Not my son just being the one who was always with me, but abandonment issues. I've had to fight these battles of custody, contend with my husband's ongoing abusive text messages, and manipulating and bribing my son to not talk to me on our court allocated times. The never-ending court dates that don't lead to a final date, and still after 2 years of the process, we don't have one. I have cried. I have been angry with the frustration of the outdated system, where a woman doesn't have a leg to stand on. She needs to continually to provide evidence of the years of her torment and abuse, where even when these are founded, the father gets custody because the mother is placed in the same proximity of her abuser in a courtroom. Her fight and flight response kicks in and takes over her body. She's got no control of her situation, her body response, or her emotions. She leads from the heart. She cries because she's not being heard. She's in fear of losing her children. Yet the court sees this as being an unstable mother. When the father's all cool, calm, and collected because he's sitting there in his limelight, he's in control. He sees how he still affects his victim, and he's in complete element. And he's looked as being stable to the courts. So I'm now sharing my story because I've come off 10 years of antidepressants within 7 months of leaving my abuser. I have the daily tools of my life that were gathered during my abusive marriage, where I learned much about myself. I've taken many types of healing modalities to get here during my journey and within my studies for my holistic wellness business as well. So I'm here today. I am standing strong at the most, and standing strong in myself, and I'm taking control of my future. I've been in the system to notice the lack of support at the most fundamental time. And I'm creating a course to share my tools to help other women overcome adversity after leaving their abusive relationships. These tools are designed to help women at the scariest time, right after they leave. There's a very small window of an opportunity here to help these women before it becomes too hard and too scary for them and they go back. I'm sharing my story about my battle for custody of my son, to take a stand for all women who lose the battle for their children from domestic abusive relationships due to the outdated legal system. I share my story to shed light on a change that needs to take place in a system that has continued to make a victim of domestic abuse a victim of the court system also. When I had a lawyer, I was told by him that my case was the worst handling of a court case that involved child custody and domestic violence that he'd ever seen in his 30 years of being a lawyer. I share my story because I want to empower others who have gone through and who are going through what I have endured also, to know that there is a much brighter future after the fact, that you're all stronger than you think you are, more capable than you've been ever led to believe, and you totally have the ability to take a hold of your life, take control of your happiness, and you can lead the best life you can't yet even imagine. Thank you. Thank you for taking your time to listen to me and my story.